My beloved child. Before this night is over, you will understand why your soulmate could not keep pretending that the distance between you was caused by someone else. The third person is no longer standing between your hearts, but their absence has exposed something far more powerful than jealousy, competition, or regret. Your soulmate has finally spoken the words they were most afraid to say, and once those words left their mouth, nothing around them felt the same. It happened in a room so quiet that even the smallest sound seemed unusually clear. Rain tapped against the window. A lamp burned in the corner, casting a warm circle of light across the floor. Your soulmate sat with both hands wrapped around a cup they had forgotten to drink from, staring into the dark surface as though it might offer an answer. Across from them sat someone they trusted, someone who had watched them make excuses for months. You keep saying it's over, that person said softly. But you don't look relieved. Your soulmate did not respond. Their fingers tightened around the cup. Their eyes moved toward the window, following a drop of rain as it slid slowly down the glass. They had imagined this moment many times, the third person gone, the confusion settled, the noise finally quiet. They had believed peace would arrive the instant that connection ended. But peace had not come. Instead, your memory had become louder. Every silence carried your voice. Every familiar street awakened a moment they had tried to bury. Every ordinary detail, a certain song playing in a store, the color of the sky at dusk, the way someone laughed from across a crowded room seemed to point back toward you. And now they could no longer blame anyone else for what they felt. The third person had left without a dramatic confrontation. There had been no shouting in the street, no slammed door, no final scene worthy of a movie. There was only a conversation beneath cold white kitchen lights, where both people finally admitted that they had been holding together something that had never felt whole. I think part of you has always been somewhere else, the third person had said. Your soulmate had looked down at the table. They could have denied it. They had denied it before. They could have called it confusion, timing, unfinished history, or emotional exhaustion. But that evening, the excuses no longer formed quickly enough. So they remained silent. And sometimes silence reveals the truth more clearly than any confession. The third person studied their face for a long moment before asking the question your soulmate had spent months avoiding. Is it them? Your name was never spoken, yet it filled the entire room. Your soulmate's breath caught. Something changed in their expression, not guilt exactly, but recognition. It was the look of someone who had reached the end of a long road and discovered that every turn had led back to the same door. They did not say yes. But they did not say no. That was when the third person understood. They stood slowly, pushed their chair beneath the table, and gathered the few belongings they had brought. Before leaving, they paused beside the doorway and looked back, not with anger, but with the tired honesty of someone who had finally accepted what they could not change. You should stop punishing them for being the person you couldn't forget. Then the door closed. For several minutes, your soulmate remained seated beneath those harsh kitchen lights. They expected relief. They expected sadness. They even expected fear. What they did not expect was the sudden image of your face appearing in their mind with such clarity that it felt as though you were standing just beyond the room. Not the version of you from the final conversation. Not the version shaped by misunderstanding. They saw you as you had been in one quiet moment neither of you ever discussed again. You were sitting beside them, listening while they spoke about a part of their life they rarely revealed. You did not interrupt. You did not rush to repair them. You simply stayed. There was kindness in your eyes, but no pity. You made them feel seen without making them feel exposed. They had not understood the value of that moment when it happened. Now it returned like a light switched on in an abandoned house. That memory was the beginning of their unraveling. Over the following days, your soulmate moved through familiar routines while feeling like a stranger inside their own life. They woke before sunrise and reached for their phone, only to stop when they remembered there was no message waiting. They drove past places where the two of you had once talked for hours, slowing without meaning to. They opened old conversations, reading not only your words, but the pauses between them. They noticed how often you had offered patience when they gave you uncertainty. They noticed how gently you had asked for honesty. They noticed the exact point where your messages became shorter not because you cared less, but because you were beginning to protect the part of yourself they kept wounding. That realization did not arrive as a dramatic wave. It came in fragments. A sentence reread at midnight. A photograph they could not delete. A voice note they listened to twice and then closed before the ending. Each fragment revealed another truth: you had not disappeared suddenly. You had slowly learned that loving them did not require you to remain where your heart was continually placed second. Your soulmate had once misunderstood your silence as pride. Now they recognized it as self-respect. This understanding should have made their next step obvious. They should have called you. They should have sent the message they had rewritten more times than they could count. But something held them back. It was not the third person. It was the fear that they had waited too long. One evening, they sat in their car outside a small cafe the two of you had visited together. The windows glowed amber against the blue darkness. Inside, people leaned across tables, speaking with the easy confidence of those who believed there would always be more time. Your soulmate remembered where you had sat. They remembered the way you had traced the edge of your cup before asking, "Are you actually happy, or are you just trying not to disappoint anyone?" At the time, they had laughed and changed the subject. Now that question returned with painful precision. Were they happy? Or had they built an entire life around avoiding the answer? Their phone rested in their palm. Your name was already on the screen. One touch would have connected them to you, or at least to the possibility of you. Their thumb hovered over the call button. Then a memory stopped them. It was the last time you had tried to reach them with complete honesty. You had said, "I don't need perfection from you. I need to know I'm not imagining what this means." They had read those words while sitting beside the third person. They had felt the truth of them. And they had responded with distance. Not because you were wrong. Because you were too close to what they had been trying to hide. Now, alone in the parked car, your soulmate finally understood that they had not chosen someone else over you. The truth was more complicated. They had chosen emotional safety over emotional honesty. The third person represented a path that demanded less courage. There was companionship, but no terrifying depth. There was comfort, but no mirror. You had been the mirror. You reflected the tenderness they wanted, the future they secretly imagined, and the wounds they had never healed enough to discuss. Being loved by you required them to become visible, and visibility frightened them more than loneliness. That was the first confession they made aloud. Not to you. Not yet. They whispered it into the dark car. I was afraid of how real it was. The words sounded strange in their own voice. They repeated them, more firmly this time. I was afraid because it was real. Something loosened inside them. For the first time, their actions formed a pattern they could no longer misunderstand. The delayed replies. The mixed signals. The sudden retreat whenever closeness became undeniable. The way they let another person occupy space in their life while their heart continued turning toward you. They had not been confused about whom they loved. They had been frightened by what loving you would require them to risk. But this realization created a new question, one even more unsettling. Why had the third person truly left? Your soulmate assumed the answer was obvious. The relationship lacked depth. Their feelings were divided. The connection could not survive the truth. Then, 3 nights later, a message arrived. It was from the third person. Your soulmate stared at the notification for nearly a minute before opening it. The message contained only one sentence. There's something I didn't tell you before I walked away. Your soulmate's heartbeat quickened. They typed, "What is it?" The reply did not come immediately. Minutes passed. Then 10. Then 20. Your soulmate placed the phone down, picked it back up, and walked from one side of the room to the other. The silence felt deliberate, as though the third person were deciding how much truth to reveal. At last, the screen lit again. I knew about the message. Your soulmate froze. There had been many messages. Conversations with you. Drafts never sent. Words deleted before delivery. What message? They asked. This time the answer arrived quickly. The one you never received. The air seemed to leave the room. Your soulmate sat down slowly. They searched through their memory, trying to understand. Had you sent something they had missed? Had it been deleted? Had someone interfered? Before they could ask, another message appeared. You need to know that I saw it before you did. A quiet dread moved through your soulmate, not fear of danger, but fear of discovering that the story they had believed for so long was incomplete. What did it say? The typing indicator appeared, vanished, then appeared again. Finally, the third person answered. It was from them. They sent it the night everything changed. Your soulmate knew exactly which night. The night you stopped trying. The night your final conversation ended without resolution. The night they convinced themselves that your silence meant you had decided they were no longer worth fighting for. They gripped the phone. Why didn't I see it? There was a long pause before the response came. Because I removed it. Your soulmate stood so quickly that the chair scraped across the floor. The room seemed to tilt around them. Anger rose first, sharp and immediate, but beneath it was something heavier, the unbearable possibility that your withdrawal had not been rejection at all. You deleted their message? Yes. Why? The third person did not defend themselves. I was afraid you would leave. I could see the way you changed whenever they reached out. I told myself I was protecting what we had, but I knew I was only delaying the truth. Your soulmate's hands trembled. What did the message say? The answer took several minutes. When it arrived, it was not copied word for word. The third person claimed they no longer had the original. But they remembered enough. You had written that you were willing to have one final honest conversation. You had said you understood their fear, but you could not keep standing outside a door they refused to open. You had told them that if there was still something real between you, they needed to choose honesty before silence made the choice for both of you. And at the end, you had written something the third person never forgot. I am not asking you to chase me. I am asking you not to hide from what you already know. Your soulmate read that sentence until the words blurred. For months, they had believed you walked away without offering them a final chance. Now they knew you had offered one. And someone else had hidden it. Yet even then, your soulmate could not place all the blame on the third person. That would have been too easy. One deleted message had changed the final moment, but it did not erase every earlier opportunity. It did not explain why your soulmate had remained silent before that night. It did not excuse the ways they had made you question your importance. The third person had interfered. But your soulmate had created the space in which interference became possible. That truth broke through their anger. They lowered the phone and covered their face with both hands. For the first time, they did not ask, "Why did this happen to me?" They asked, "What did my fear cost them?" And in that moment, the story shifted. This was no longer only about recovering lost love. It was about taking responsibility for the pain left behind. The next morning, your soulmate met the third person near a riverside path where the air carried the scent of wet earth and leaves. The sky was pale, and the water moved steadily beneath a stone bridge. The third person looked exhausted. "I'm sorry," they said before your soulmate could speak. Your soulmate wanted to demand details. They wanted to know when the message had arrived, how it had been removed, and whether anything else had been hidden. But when they saw the shame in the other person's expression, they realized punishment would not return the lost months. So they asked only one question. "Why are you telling me now?" The third person looked toward the river. "Because I heard what you said after I left." Your soulmate's brow tightened. "What did I say?" "You called someone that night. You thought I was gone, but I was still outside the door." A cold breeze moved through the trees. Your soulmate tried to remember. After the breakup, they had called the trusted friend who later sat across from them in the lamplit room. Their thoughts had been scattered. Their voice had broken. They had said things they had never allowed themselves to admit while the relationship still existed. "What did you hear?" your soulmate asked. The third person turned toward them. "I heard you say that losing me hurt, but losing them changed who you were." The words settled between them. Your soulmate looked away. The third person continued. "That's when I understood I hadn't only deleted a message. I had helped keep two people inside a misunderstanding because I wanted more time with someone whose heart had already made its choice. There was no cruelty in their voice. Only sorrow. Then they reached into their coat pocket and handed your soulmate a folded piece of paper. What is this? The part one couldn't send in a text. Your soulmate unfolded it. Written across the page was a date, a time, and the name of a place they immediately recognized. It was where you had waited that final night. The third person had found the details in the deleted message before removing it. You had asked your soulmate to meet you there. You had waited beneath the old clock near the station, believing they might still come. Your soulmate stared at the paper. How long did they wait? The third person swallowed. I don't know. But there's one more thing. Your soulmate looked up. I passed that station later that night. The river rushed beneath the bridge, filling the silence. And, your soulmate asked. The third person's eyes lowered. They were still there. Your soulmate could not speak. They were sitting alone beneath the clock, the third person continued. It had started raining. They kept checking the entrance every time someone walked through. The image struck with almost physical force. You, waiting. The rain darkening your clothes. The crowd thinning. Every approaching footstep carrying a moment of hope, then disappointment. Your soulmate had been only a few miles away, believing you had abandoned them. You had been beneath that clock, believing they had chosen not to come. The third person wiped a tear from their cheek. I almost told them the truth. I almost walked over. But I didn't. Why not? Because they looked so certain you would arrive. And I was ashamed of what I had done. Your soulmate folded the paper carefully, but their hands would not stop trembling. The third person stepped back. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm telling you because they deserve to know they weren't ignored. And you deserve to understand what happened before you decide what to do next. Then they walked away, leaving your soulmate beside the river with a date, a place, and an image they would never be able to forget. That evening, your soulmate returned to the station. The old clock still hung above the entrance. Travelers moved beneath it with bags, umbrellas, and hurried expressions. Announcements echoed from distant platforms. The world continued as though nothing important had ever happened there. But your soulmate saw the place differently now. They stood where you had once waited. They imagined you glancing toward the entrance. They imagined the hope slowly leaving your eyes. They imagined the moment you finally understood that no one was coming. Your soulmate whispered your name. It disappeared beneath the noise of an arriving train. They took out their phone and opened the message they had been writing for days. It began with an apology, but suddenly an apology felt too small. It continued with an explanation, but explanations sounded dangerously close to excuses. So they deleted everything. They began again. I know what happened at the station. Their thumb hovered over send. Before they could press it, their phone rang. It was the trusted friend from the lamplit room. You need to come over, the friend said. Why? Because there's something you don't know about the night they waited for you. Your soulmate's chest tightened. What else could there possibly be? The friend was silent for a moment. Then they said, they weren't waiting only to ask whether you still loved them. A train roared past the platform, sending a rush of wind through the station. Your soulmate turned away from the tracks. What were they going to say? The answer came softly. They had made a decision about their future. And that decision included you. Your soulmate gripped the phone, their unfinished message still glowing on the screen. But the friend had not yet revealed the most important part. Because before the call ended, they added one final sentence. And I have the letter they planned to give you that night. My beloved child. Your heartbeat would have quickened in that moment, not because the mystery had grown darker, but because the truth was finally ready to step into the light. Some stories are not healed by discovering who was wrong. They are healed when every hidden piece is placed where it has always belonged. And now, every path, every silence, every unanswered question has led to this final moment. Your soulmate did not hesitate. The station, the rain, the old clock, the forgotten message, and the letter waiting somewhere beyond their reach all merged into a single realization. Time had stolen many opportunities, but it had not erased the desire to finally face the truth with courage. They drove through quiet streets beneath a sky washed in silver clouds. The world outside seemed strangely calm, as though everything around them already knew that this night would become the turning point they would remember for the rest of their life. When they arrived, the trusted friend was waiting on the front porch, holding a weathered envelope that had clearly been protected with care for a very long time. I always hoped this day would come, the friend whispered. Your soulmate accepted the envelope carefully. The paper had softened around the edges. The ink of your name on the front remained perfectly clear. For several long seconds, they simply stared at it. This was not just a letter. It was a piece of time that had never been allowed to reach its destination. With trembling hands, they unfolded the pages. Your handwriting appeared exactly as they remembered, steady, thoughtful, filled with quiet sincerity. The first lines brought tears before they reached the middle of the page. You had written that love should never become a competition against fear. You explained that you never wanted to force them into a decision. You simply wanted honesty. If they truly believed your story together had ended, you promised to respect that decision completely. But if even the smallest part of their heart still reached toward yours, you would meet them halfway without anger, without blame, and without demanding perfection. Then came the sentence that stopped their breathing. I don't need the version of you that has every answer. I only hope one day I can meet the version of you that is no longer afraid to tell the truth. Your soulmate lowered the letter. Their eyes closed. Everything suddenly made sense. You had never asked them to become someone impossible. You had only asked them to become honest. The trusted friend quietly sat beside them. I always wondered, the friend said softly, what would have happened if that letter had reached you? Your soulmate smiled sadly. It would have changed everything. But maybe, the friend replied, it still can. Those words remained with them all night. For the first time, your soulmate stopped asking how the past could have been different. Instead, they began asking what kind of future honesty could still create. The next morning arrived with golden sunlight spilling across quiet streets. Instead of carrying regret, your soulmate carried something entirely new. Responsibility. Not guilt. Not shame. Responsibility is different. Guilt keeps people trapped in yesterday. Responsibility gives them permission to build tomorrow differently. They walked back to the old station where so much pain had silently unfolded months before. Travelers hurried beneath the familiar clock. Children laughed nearby. A musician played a gentle melody that drifted through the air. Life had continued. Yet for your soulmate, this place no longer represented loss. It had become a reminder that true love rarely disappears because of one mistake. It waits for courage. Standing beneath the clock, they remembered every version of themselves that had stood in the way. The fearful version. The uncertain version. The silent version. Then they quietly said goodbye to each of them. I don't need to become that person again. The wind carried the words away. In their place stood someone finally ready to love without hiding. Days passed. Your soulmate refused to rush. They knew that healing deserved patience. Instead of sending impulsive explanations, they reflected honestly upon every chapter of your shared story. They remembered your kindness during ordinary conversations. The way you noticed small details everyone else ignored. The way you celebrated their smallest victories. The way your presence made ordinary afternoons feel unforgettable. They also remembered every moment they had failed to communicate. Every opportunity they had allowed fear to steal. They accepted those memories without trying to rewrite them. Because healing begins when people stop editing the past and start learning from it. Finally, one peaceful evening as the sun painted the horizon in soft shades of gold and rose, your soulmate finished writing a new message. There were no dramatic promises. No attempts to erase history. No desperate pleas. Only truth. I finally know what happened. I finally understand what I was too afraid to admit. You deserved honesty long before today. If life has carried your heart somewhere else, I will always be grateful for what you gave me. But if there is still a conversation waiting somewhere between us, would be honored to meet you not as the person I used to be, but as the person your kindness helped me become. They read the message only once. Then they pressed send. No hesitation. No second guessing. No deleting. Only peace. Hours passed. The phone remained silent. For the first time, silence did not frighten them. Because they understood something beautiful. Honesty is never measured by how quickly someone answers. It is measured by the courage it takes to finally speak. Late that evening, the screen softly illuminated. Your name appeared. Your soulmate simply stared. 1,000 possibilities rushed through their mind. They opened your message. It contained only one sentence. I've been hoping we'd finally meet without fear standing between us. Nothing more. Nothing less. Sometimes the simplest words carry the greatest miracles. A week later, beneath the same old clock where misunderstanding once separated two hearts, two familiar figures slowly walked toward one another. Neither rushed. Neither pretended nothing had happened. Life had changed both of you. That was obvious before either of you spoke. For a few quiet seconds, you simply looked into each other's eyes. There was sadness for what had been lost, gratitude for what had been learned, and hope for what still remained possible. Your soulmate spoke first. "I'm sorry." You gently nodded. "I know. No explanations. I don't need them. I only wanted you to know the truth." You smiled softly. "I think we're finally standing inside it." Neither of you tried to erase the past. Instead, you honored it. Because every difficult chapter had taught compassion. Every misunderstanding had created wisdom. Every painful silence had prepared both hearts to recognize the extraordinary value of simple honesty. The third person had disappeared from the picture long ago. Yet the greatest obstacle had never truly been another individual. It had always been fear. And now fear no longer had a place between two hearts willing to choose openness instead of hiding. As the evening sky slowly filled with stars, both of you began walking together away from the station. Not because every question had already been answered, but because you had finally become people capable of discovering those answers together. That is how true restoration often begins. Not with perfection. With presence. Not with certainty. With courage. Not by pretending yesterday never happened. By allowing today's truth to become stronger than yesterday's misunderstanding. So if this story has found its way to your heart, let it remind you of something timeless. The greatest confessions are rarely loud. The strongest love is rarely proven through grand performances. It is revealed in quiet honesty. In humility. In forgiveness freely offered. In the courage to return with a sincere heart after fear has finally lost its voice. May your heart always recognize the people who choose truth over pride. May peace replace every unnecessary burden you have carried. May wisdom guide every important conversation still waiting in your future. May hope continue shining even when the road ahead cannot yet be fully seen. And may love patient, honest, compassionate, and genuine find its way to you in exactly the right season. May you be surrounded by grace, strengthened by wisdom, comforted by peace, and blessed with relationships that reflect kindness, faithfulness, and authentic love. If this fictional inspirational story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need a little hope today. Leave a comment below with the word truth if you believe that honesty has the power to transform hearts. Until next time, may peace walk beside you, and may every new day bring fresh hope and unexpected blessings.